Hello, everybody. Happy New Year. It is Monday, January 2nd, 2024. And at this moment, I was supposed to be recording the first show of the year with Mark Gober, who I started the year with last year. I started not feeling well last night, and this morning I almost canceled the show. And then I decided to do it, and I felt great. And then he showed up, and his microphone was not working at all. So we've rescheduled for next week, which allowed me the time to do a task that I needed to do. You're about to watch an episode, the most recent episode of the Double Cross or the Double X or the XX or whatever, however you like to call it. It was supposed to be the Double Xmas special, but where I was did not have fast enough internet for me to do the recording, editing, and production work I needed to put it out. So it's going out today, a little late. And I am, because I was supposed to have a show today for everyone, I'm going to share this with everyone. Normally, this is part of the the experiencer or the $10 and up package, but today it's going to go to everyone. And I'm offering a sort of preamble to this for a couple of reasons. Both Les and I were kind of unsure about this show after we recorded it. We both felt a little bit off, but we thought that there was, a few good nuggets in there so that it was worth putting it out. We both had some weird stuff at the end of the show when we got off. I was so tired I almost couldn't go to work, and I texted him and he said the same thing. Like, it was very bizarre. And the usual nonsense that happens after shows where like weird things that you talked about will sort of show up in synchronistic ways, in your YouTube feed or in the real world or whatever. Like, all of that stuff happened, but something very specific and odd based on what we were talking about towards the end of the show seemed to be cued by the conversation that he and I had. So I will stay tuned. At the end of the show, I will show you what I'm talking about. So I'm going to have a little post-amble as well. Since I have you all here, there will be sort of an announcement sheet going out probably sometime today or tomorrow as well, that kind of lets everybody know some changes that are going to be made for the new year. So look for that. I thank all of you for the time and attention you've given to the things that I think are interesting, the support, the trust, and the friendship. 2023 was a fascinating and difficult year. And I am excited to see what 2024 brings. I think it's going to be different. I think we're going to have an unusual one on our hands here. So I look forward to spending the time with all of you and enjoy this somewhat all over the place, rambling conversation. And the show that was supposed to have gone out today will be out next week. And this is making no sense. Is it making any sense what I'm saying? It's totally okay, good. Laura's here with me this morning because she was going to take notes for the Mark Gober show. Anywho, all right, everybody have a wonderful day. Enjoy the show. Catch the little bit at the end because it's kind of fascinating, and we'll see you real soon. Merry Double Xmas, everybody. Hey, Les.
Hey, Emily, how's it going?
I am doing well and ready for a little break over the holidays. I have today and tomorrow to get through work and all the normal life nonsense, and then we're taking a little trip for the holidays. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm starting to notice like my sort of cycles of like I have like a trip. I come back, I'm kind of relaxed. I keep everything sort of balanced and, whatever for like a couple of weeks. And then things start to get chaotic. And the next couple of weeks are like exhausting and overwhelming. And then, I need a break again or whatnot. So it seems like this one's coming just in time. And yeah, but
I-
all
Is
right.
it is it a
Good.
Christmas themed trip, or is it a trip away from Christmas kind of thing?
Well, I mean, like, I give like absolutely zero shits about Christmas.
Mm.
In terms of like, I don't think I understand what it actually is, if it is a real thing. And in terms of like what society has done with it, I kind of give no shits. I appreciate having, like a little bit of time off, and that type of thing. And, whatever, eating and drinking with people is something like I always like to do. So we're just going to visit friends, right? And like that, there will be holiday festivities ever going on, like, is fine, but it's, not the point. It's just an opportunity to go when either you don't have work or it's acceptable to miss work, right? Yeah, so that. And yeah, I don't know. I don't have many feelings about holidays. You know what I mean? Like, I never believed in Santa Claus, so it wasn't. And I came from a family that for most of my childhood was a broken family, and even before that, like, we definitely didn't have like the family that you picture when you're a kid, with everyone getting together and celebrating and it being a joyous occasion. Just was never my reality. So I don't have any like
Mm.
crystallized memories or ideas of what this time of year should be, right? So
It's funny because like a lot of people are very kind of depressed this time of year, like probably because of the weather and whatnot. But and then they force themselves to put on this really fake kind of jovial Christmas mood. And
mhm.
yeah, it's interesting to observe, society doing that because
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I don't, it's like they talk about being that most wonderful time of the year or the happiest time of the year. It's fucking cold and dark and the days are short, and you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
okay,
yeah,
you have
yeah.
to spend a bunch of money on shit you don't really want to be spending it on, and being around people who you can't stand. Everyone says you must love and be around, right? So like,
Right, right,
I had a little casual chat with Howdy the other day, and we
yeah.
decided, we recorded it because you never know when you're going to catch a good nugget, right?
Mhm.
So we're going to put it out on the solstice, because like that's where his energy is more focused, and like from a spiritual or metaphysical or anything actually real happening, that's probably where attention should be. But he'd made this little video on YouTube where he was talking about sort of like the inversion of the Christmas, right? And if you kind of switch it from the birth of Christ to the death of Christ, right, then maybe you're getting closer to something or whatever. So we had an interesting little chat about maybe some useful contemplations or activities on the solstice. So that's the 21st. So we'll put out our little video on the 21st. But and there does seem to be some, he and I got into a conversation about like whether like the simulations sort of reset or turn over, or there's like an opportunity to move out of one into the next on the solstices or the eclipses or the equinoxes or some of those kinds of dates, right? But yeah, I mean, I don't know what the fuck this shit is. It seems silly to me, but who am I to say what's what's an important cultural or societal, emblem or milestone or whatever it is. How about you?
Talking of Howdy, must have been last year or something. I overheard him say like, he went to the Stone Circle in England, right? And he felt nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Stonehenge, sorry, Stonehenge. He felt nothing. He went to go one up the road, Amesbury, Stone Circles, and he was saying like, "My God, it nearly killed him. The amount of energy getting drawn from you, right?"
Mm-hmm.
So I went and tested this out, and he ain't fucking lying. I
Mm-hmm.
walked around Amesbury Circle, and yeah, man, it makes you feel like you're having low blood sugars. You just feel awful by the time you get round to the other side of it.
Yeah.
Um, Synchronicity, yeah. I was looking at that bit of footage the other day on my phone. I was actually going to make a little documentary about it. I never got around to it. That was last Christmas. So yeah, he was right about that, man. Phew.
Well, I think there's a couple of things. Like, I think it's possible that a lot of these sites are only like they're like certain ones are active at certain times and not others. I think that's possible. The other thing is, I think it's possible that some locations or whatever resonate with some people and not others, right? So
Yeah,
I went to I've been to Sedona a couple of times, like, and while there's definitely natural beauty there, like, I feel nothing, right? There's
yeah,
I can like go to one of these spots and kind of take a look, behind my eyes, and like it seems like there's something there, but I'm not feeling anything. But I know other people who are like, "Oh my God, you feel that?" And whatever it is. And so I don't know if it's how much of it is mind control, like people either expect to feel something or expect not to feel something. And so that's happening. I don't know how much of it is when you're there, and then how much of it is whether your particular frequency comes into or out of resonance with that, and that's what it is. Like, I'm really not sure, but
yeah.
yeah, definitely had that. Sometimes I go places that like are not even like really known places to many people, and there's so much energy there, tremendous amount. I mean, like the location in Chatsworth is crazy, right?
Mm.
Like that location is, but you don't hear people coming from all over the world to go feel the energy there. And I've been to other places that are similar, right? But you go to like Laura used to live across the street from Garden of the Gods in Colorado Springs. Are you familiar with Garden of the Gods?
No,
Okay, so let's take a look at this. All right, Garden of the Gods. All right.
with a name like that, this better be impressive.
All right. So, well, there's some, of course, there's going to be some synchromistic connections to some other things as well. So, this is Garden of the Gods in Colorado Springs, and she literally lived like right across the street from it, right?
Oh wow, yeah.
And so we went over there, and walked around, and it's beautiful. There's a lot of people there. It's beautiful, but I didn't, like you feel the awe of nature, which is feeling something, but that is different than when you feel the, oh my God, like this is a crazy magnetism or electromagnetism or whatever it is, right? I did not feel anything like that. I did pay close attention. There were some very unusual structures in some of the rocks, and not just the ones that are like highlighted or focused on, but even just every little general place that you sort of walk around. Like it felt very much to me like there's like all these little sort of nooks and crannies to sort of hide in or pocket energy in or whatever it is, right? And you would see stuff like, you could see stuff like this from her apartment or whatever it was,
Yeah.
right? So it's beautiful. But
Oh
one of
yeah.
the things I discovered on one of my dips into the maps of Chatsworth is that there is a Garden of the Gods in Chatsworth.
Mm.
Check this.
Oh yeah, look.
Like, isn't that crazy that the place
Yeah.
that she lived, there's something in the same place that I was from, that with the exact same name and some similar structures, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is the Garden of the Gods Trail on the Iverson Movie Ranch, which I've talked about sort of at that location. I did not know this. Growing up, I've never heard that there was a Garden of the Gods in Chatsworth, right? Crazy. It looks almost exactly like the one in Colorado, a different color, right?
Yeah.
Pretty similar structures, right? And that of all the places, the place I was from and the place she was living, right? I just moved away from Chatsworth when she and I started talking, right? We had just sold the house in Chatsworth. Anywho, oh, here she is right now. I'm talking to Les. We were talking about the Garden of the Gods in Colorado, and how you lived across the street, and then how there's one in Chatsworth too.
What?
I've told you that.
Oh, that's right. That's
Yeah.
right. I forgot
Yeah.
about that.
So, anywho, okay. So
the building we spoke about ages ago, it's possibly the headquarters of the 1010, the Walkie Scorchy or whatever the fuck it's called. That has a garden at the top of it, which they call the Sky Garden. It's like the highest garden in Europe, I think.
What's the name of the building?
Sorry, what?
What building are you talking about?
The Walkie-Talkie building.
Yeah. In England, yeah.
Yeah. So that's got a garden at the top of it, the Sky Garden, and highest garden in Europe.
All right,
so shit must go down there.
All right, let's check that.
If you're going to have a ceremony, you want to do it in the highest garden in Europe, right?
Right. So here's the building we're talking about for those who haven't been following along long enough to remember that. So there's the walkie-talkie building, and let's find the garden on top. Oh yeah, it's like an indoor terrarium sky garden, and then there's an outdoor portion too. So okay, I see it. Yeah. All right. Okay, so my point with this was that when you go into these areas in Chatsworth, it feels like highly energetic. But like when you go into some of these other ones where they're like world famous and the tourists comes from all over, like they're beautiful, but I don't feel the same thing, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if when we get to know them as national monuments, it's because they've been deactivated, or like they've been, whatever they've been. I don't know. And the ones that are sort of either off the books or unknown, or access is closed to them, those are the ones that are still active or still being used, or there's still some battle going on for control of those gates or whatever it is. And then later when that's come and gone, then that also will be, it'll be really, really funny if like 100 years from now, like Chatsworth is like Stonehenge, right, kind of thing, or whatever it is, and if people come from all over the world, right, to see this stuff that like we're talking about here. I don't know how this works. Like I don't know what the secret sauce is for which ones they decide to make a big deal out of and which ones they don't. But I've had that same experience where the lesser known, but this goes for everything, Liz. Like when I go to parties, like if it's a big party with like a lot of more sort of commercial attention, or people DJs that are like more sort of widely known and famous, right? Like it feels like you're shopping at Walmart or whatever it is. But when you go to like something weirder and more underground, it's like, oh damn, this is I feel that shit, right? Like
definitely, yeah. They divert you to the decoy, the inflatable tank of it.
Yeah.
And I mean that Stonehenge, my speculation is that's just a decoy. They've just moved them stones, and what it was on top of, I think the British Army have built their headquarters on it, because the British Army headquarters are down the road in in Salisbury somewhere, which is so I reckon they've put their massive building over the top of that Demon Gate or Hell Gate or whatever the fuck it is, and they just moved them stones over there, and all the tourists just go and walk around these decoy inflatable tank stones.
What was the name of the place that you and Howdy both felt?
It's Amesbury Stone Circle. Yeah,
Amesbury Stonehenge. Okay. No, that not regular Stonehenge.
No, hang on. Maybe there's not a B in it. It's Avebury. That's it.
Okay.
My bad.
There we go.
Yeah, again, or Howdy might have put a spell on me, right? He might have Inception style put this idea in my head, and I went up there and psychosomatically put this energy drain on myself. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Because I used to drive through this all the time, like when I was working in the countryside, because a road actually goes through it, and I used to think, that's not that impressive. And then,
I feel like this is the second time in a few weeks that someone has drawn my attention to this place. So, I mean, there's so many Like once somebody tells you you're going to feel something, depending on your level of suggestibility and a lot of things about your psyche and whatever, you're either definitely going to feel something or definitely not. It depends if you're like a naysayer or I want to feel it too kind of person, right? And it's such a right, like it's so, and we don't know, like, I mean, how far can we extend that, right? Like, does the same thing go for like earthquakes, right? Like, like like any other sort of massive event, like you're only sometimes aware of it because your attention is being drawn to it by someone telling you what either has, is, or will happen. And then what is the level of creation of the projection of your own mind, right? It's I mean, we could be sitting in a pod somewhere, right, that is like one of those vibrating chairs at Brookstone. Like Brookstone is the name of the store where they have stuff like that here. I don't know what it is in England, right? So like we could all just be hooked up to wires and machines sitting in a pod, and every once in a while like they turn they send a vibration through, right? And like some person might think it's one thing, some person might think it's another. I have no idea, right? Like did you watch that 1899, I think it was called 1899?
No, I never got around to watching it. No.
Okay, I mean there were some interesting ideas there, but it got canceled. It's only one season, but there's like all of these levels and layers of reality and projected reality that you're working through over the course of the series. And in the very last scene is basically like, not only is that the person or the people experiencing those simulations are actually in a pod in a spaceship flying around the cosmos, right, type of thing. And so it's very it's kind of not what you were expecting at the, like, even the feeling that they have that they're in a psychiatric hospital being tested and experimented on is part of the illusion, because they're really flying around in a pod in a spaceship, right? Like,
so sorry to jump in there, but
yeah.
didn't I? When was that show made? What year?
I mean, it was on TV. We watched it last year, I think. Or earlier this year. Maybe it was either earlier this year or last year. We watched it after dark. So we watched dark and then we watched 1899. So it was probably actually earlier this year, like maybe January or February or something, early in the spring. So it was probably made last year or the year before. I mean, it has a huge production value, so it probably was a couple of years in the making.
Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah, I'll let that one off, because I'm sure I said that that theory to like one of you, if either you or Nish, on one of our first ever chats.
Yeah.
That very what exactly what you just said. We could all just be floating around up there, and we just chose to come down here for a game, right, and find each other and all that kind of stuff. So, well, yeah, again, maybe we're all having these same thoughts at the exact same time, like, and that's how the TV shows are like coming out. It's just very interesting, isn't it? That we say something, and then it's automatically as a show about it, or there's a book about it, and you've never known about it before, and then it's just here.
Yep. Honey, that's loud. Can you close the door?
So Emily, just a quick. I just had to move my car.
Okay. We'll push pause. Move your car.
No, Emily, I've done.
What?
I've done it.
Okay, gotcha. All right. So yeah, I mean, like, did you see?
No, but I want to tell you just something quickly before I forget about it. So there was water dripping on top of my car, and it was doing my fucking head in just now. It was dripping on top of my head, and it was putting really like knocking me off, right? But last night I was talking about, how people are sitting on the internet waiting for the next thing to come, right? The next bit of doom. I was saying that's like Chinese water torture, right? Do you know Chinese water torture, when a drip is just dripping on someone's head, driving them insane. And I don't know, it's just dripping on my car like that. Do you know what I'm saying? It's the fucking.
This is how it is now. Like, it's complete. That everything is like that. Everything.
Yeah, everything. I mean, and as we're probably going to talk about, the volcano we spoke about last night, and then now it's back. But anyway, sorry to cut you off. Please
Yeah,
finish your
no, I
thought.
mean, that's it.
Have-
Did you see that movie that we talked about a couple of times, Jeff and I, that Don't Worry, Darling?
no, I haven't.
Right? I mean, like it's basically these people are in like a virtual or projected simulated reality and they're sharing it, but they're each basically being kept sort of each woman in the simulation except for one is being kept in the real world by her husband, drugged, sedated, and hooked to some weird virtual eye scanning machine in the bedroom of their own apartment. So, like, the projection is taking place in different, the technology is in different locations around the city, but they're all being projected into the same simulation, right? And experiencing the same activities from their own perspective, right? And yeah, like we don't know that this isn't what that is, right? But when I'm thinking of what you're talking about there, like that, most people would not think about that. What you're talking about with the water, remember when we were doing all those shows and saying that water was going to come, and then we went to Houston, Laura, and the parking garage was flooded, and everywhere we went there was water everywhere, even though it was like hot and 110 degrees outside, right? So it's kind of, most people would not put those things that you just put together, right? Because we're taught to think of there being a leaky pipe or a leaky faucet or whatever it is as being like normal. And on some level it is, right? But if we're living in something like hypnotic, right, then it would be some small thing like water dripping somewhere in the room that is providing the realistic experience of the Chinese water torture inside the simulation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just how many, like, I don't think even you who've gotten exceptionally good at this can imagine how many layers into the illusion we are.
Oh yeah.
Right.
No, definitely.
And then so literally just so people know, and we can start to, I guess we can give people the double Christmas present of the Iceland illusion and the Ireland illusion. And it's funny that there's ice and there's ire, right?
Yeah.
But literally you sent me an email last night saying like, yeah, not much, nothing really happened. And literally within 1 hour of you sending me the email letting me know that the Iceland never materialized into anything, they generated an eruption, like to sort of throw a wrench in or give us something more to play with here, right?
Yeah. Have you had a look at any of the footage of this? Oh, right. And it's well, it looks off, doesn't it? Like what they're showing us just looks very off. It's like it's someone standing in front of a fucking screen or something, and they're calling it a fission. It's a fission eruption, so it's not an explosive eruption. It's just a fission, and it just means it's just bubbling over the top. So,
So it looks like so we watched someone explain the kind of volcano it is and why it's doing that. And, whatever, I'm not in any state of belief about anything. But basically, all of these stories that we're being fed right now are like leading us to Manifest, right? Have you seen that TV series Manifest? Like that's the whole, like the MH370 plane controversy coming back leads to Manifest, like the fission, volcanic explosion leads to Manifest. That was like the content of that story, right? Mm-hmm. And that whole series was basically about like, I guess sort of like 5 years of false time, right? That like this plane disappeared and reappeared, and people who were on the plane experienced 5 years of lots of trouble, right? And people on the ground experienced, so the way it was in the series was this: the people on the ground were missing their family who disappeared for 5 years. And then suddenly after 5 years, the plane reappeared, and the people who had been on the plane had not aged, right? And over the course of the series, and the people who came back who hadn't aged started having all of these like metaphysical and telepathic sort of experiences or gifts that made them the subject of worship for some people and the subject of ire for other people. Like some people thought they were, demonic or terrorists or whatever, and other people thought they were gifts from God, and crazy shit like that. But like over the course of the series, when the mystery becomes solved as to what had happened to the plane, right, then it was as if it never happened, right? Like it was just as if the plane actually arrived when it was supposed to, and nobody except for the people who had been on the plane remembered the challenge of all those years of the plane missing and coming back and then not being accepted by the society and whatever it is, in a very similar way to in Fringe, when they were able to save the future from the observers. Even they almost forgot that it had happened, right? But it's all the same shit. A missing plane, a reappearing plane, all of these sort of biblical or spiritual or quasi-religious characters, right? The contemplation of, fission and fusion and cloaking and teleportation and existence outside of regular, space and time. And it all connects to the same kind of fission eruption. Let me see if I can find some of it from that show. Go ahead.
So I sent that thread over to Emily, and then I went to bed. So I woke up this morning to Emily saying, having a laugh, saying like, it's finally happened. The eruption's happened. The first story I looked at on like the YouTube feed, it said in big quotes, "It feels like a movie." And there's a guy standing in front of this fission eruption, and he's saying like, "Yeah, man, it just feels like I'm watching a movie." Mm-hmm. And they seem to always do that. They always seem to do that with me. I don't know whether they're mocking me or playing with me, or I manifested this. But yeah, when every story seems to have that catchline in it somewhere at the beginning. It feels like I'm in a disaster film. It feels like I'm in a movie. Very kind of revealing, in my opinion.
All right, I'm seeing if I can find any. When I go searching for the thing from Manifest, they're just showing me other like this. Oh, here we go. Nope, they don't show that. There's no video. Oh, here we go. Season 3, episode 11. No, that's not it. I can't find it. I can't find a video of the stuff that I'm thinking of from the show. But think about, you've been seeing that they're also doing this MH370. Is it a hoax? Is it not? Did it blip out? It is literally the storyline from Manifest. So they are presenting the content of the show Manifest to the public as though it's like a real thing.
Yeah. Is Manifest a kind of spin-off from that Stephen King book film, The Langoliers? Is it any way related to that?
I don't know. It's a Robert Zemeckis film, which I think Robert Zemeckis is he did Back to the Future and all of that kind of stuff. Langoliers Manifest. Let me see if there's any connection between those two.
There's nothing coming up on my screen. Like I can't see what you're searching.
Okay, hold on. Yeah, I didn't screenshot me. So I just looked up Langoliers and Manifest. There's similarities between Manifest and Lost, and someone else says it's more like, let's see, hold on a second. It's in some ways the man here, it says right, it's more like The Event or Langoliers. Stephen King is having a great time watching Manifest.
Yeah. In the Langoliers, I think you're just seeing it from the guys that are trapped on a plane. They just, they go into like a black hole or something, and they're just flying into another reality, and they've got to get back.
What are Langoliers? Is that the name of a family or a kind of people? I've never seen it. What is Langoliers?
You know what? I've never watched. It's one of them films. It's really hard to watch because it's such a, the quality is such a B movie.
I've
only ever kind of part watched it, but so I couldn't tell you. I'm not an expert on the Langoliers. I just know it's about a plane flying into a different reality. And it just, when you was telling me about Manifest, it sounded very similar.
So we have two shows. We have Manifest and we have Katla. Remember, we've talked about Katla before, and Katla was about the ongoing eruption on like an ice plane or iceberg, whatever it is. Like I'll pull it up in just a second so we can get the exact description of it. So the Langoliers was a mini series. I'm just pulling it up so we can understand what the plot is. It's a horror miniseries consisting of 2 parts. It's directed. All right, during a red-eye flight from Los Angeles to Boston, a passenger plane flies through a strange light that causes most of the passengers and crew to disappear, leaving behind only their personal belongings. The remaining passengers who were asleep at the time include pilot Brian Engel, deadheading on the flight, along with mysterious Englishman named Nick, schoolteacher Laurel Stevenson, tool and dye worker. All right, so it's a similar kind of story. There's also so then the Katla was about. So I'm just wondering what the term Langoliers means, because one of the things with people talk about. So Katla is a real volcano, right? Mm-hmm. It's an actual volcano, and then there's the show. So let's take a look at the actual volcano here. Right? Katla is an active volcano in southern Iceland. This particular volcano has been very active historically, with at least 20 documented major eruptions since 2920 BC. So like it's down a little further, because I think the peninsula that everything is going on right now is here, right?
I think that's the one above it.
This one?
That one. I think it's that one, yeah.
Okay, for some reason I thought it was this one, but okay, maybe it's one of those. And
Katla, you might be right. You might be right, actually. You might be right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Katla is down here. And then it's been.
I mean, just to say this, that map of Iceland is not the same map of Iceland I've been looking at up until now. So even the maps fucking changed.
Even the
overnight.
Maps.
There was only one. I'm sure there was only one peninsula, but I don't know. But anyway,
okay, all right. That's interesting. But that's interesting too. I mean, I think we're literally like the rapidity with which what some people refer to as Mandela effects are occurring.
Yeah.
Right now, or like it isn't like it's instantaneous and like on a spectrum, right? Like there's just tons of them. Okay, so it is a real it's a real volcano, and then there is the Katla show, right, on Netflix, and one of the and we'll look at the Katla TV series here, and of course they announced just a little bit back that there wasn't going to be another season, even though they led us on for a couple. So this is how it goes. Remember when they told you that they didn't have to do a 5th season of Westworld, you just have to go to Los Angeles, right? They don't have to make a 5th season, a 2nd season of Katla or another season of Manifest or whatever it is. It's here. A year after an eruption of the Katla volcano began, only a few people remained in the nearby town of Vik. So like Grindavik, Vik, Reykjavik, they're all Viks. But this one is just Vik, right? There's no anything Vik, it's just Vik. Persisting despite choking ash. An ash-caked woman who apparently disappeared 20 years earlier appears in the village looking as she did back then. More ash-caked people who died in the past arrive in Vik, creating a paradox for those who knew them and reviving legends of changelings. So I'm wondering if Langoliers are changelings. Meanwhile, a volcanologist from Reykjavik discovers the remains of a meteorite buried in the glacier while having to deal emotionally with the reappearance of his dead son. Through their interactions with the changelings, the inhabitants of Vik are forced to find their own way of dealing with their unresolved issues from the past. Okay, it's funny because like Danny and I I was on Danny's show yesterday. Like it's not out yet, and I'm like I told you, I'm like kind of tired, and I'm starting to notice that like sometimes the shows aren't so great when I get to the place where I'm feeling kind of tired. But we had an interesting conversation about all of the world activities that seem to be happening right now. Like if you take them as something, whether real or fake, that is happening at a distance to give you like some perspective from which to observe them. and then really look at like, what does this represent on the inside? Like, what unresolved issues am I carrying around with me that are allowing the perception of all of this like external turmoil, right? And if you kind of use them as an opportunity to start narrowing out the inconsistencies inside of yourself, or dealing with the, like, asking the question, like, why does this one upset me so much? Like, why is Robert Kennedy Jr. becoming so unglued about this fucking Israel issue, right? Like, calm on everything else, hysterical about that. Like, what does that represent inside of him? And the same could be said for a lot of other things that are going on, including, like, you know, when we you know, when there's one false flag or hoax, or maybe it's a real thing that really activates us for some reason. Why does that one grab our attention so with such strength, right? What inside of you is being activated by that? So but I'm also like literally wondering if, like, we're about to start seeing something like this happen. Like, are they going to be unable to control people becoming aware of the fact that we live in a multidimensional reality? And are they about to start seeing other versions of themselves walking around? And is that sort of, you know, what's going on in some of these locations where they're trying to keep people from visiting?
I like it. I like it. I mean, there's definitely, I mean, I'd say the last 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, has been a very dark energy, heavy, dark energy hanging over everyone. I feel from my perception. And then it's slowly started to lift. But yeah, man, there's a lot, the Mandelas are getting a bit ridiculous. The dreaming is getting real intense in a good way. Yeah, there's definitely everything and nothing is happening all at once. And it's, yeah, you can definitely feel it. Like, it's funny. Like, I'm back working in construction, so, you know, waking up early in the morning, and so the other day I trained legs really late at night, and I got home at like 1 a.m. and I was meant to get up at like 4 to go do some construction work, and, you know, my alarm went off. I was like, nah, fuck this, man. I must have snoozed that thing for about 2 hours straight, and I was just jumping in and quantum leaping in and out of different dreams, and then I went back and listened to your Just the Three of Us, and literally in the first 2 minutes, Nish brought it up. And it's like, how is it, you know, how is it just all intertwining like this? And it's good, man. I like it. I'm enjoying this kind of, this madness. I mean, but yeah, man, the dream, I've never been much of a focus on dreams. I have dreams and stuff. I've never been a lucid dreamer, but yeah, man, that was literally, for about 2 hours, I was 10-minute snoozing and jumping straight back into a vivid dream. And it's wicked, man. I might start doing that more often.
Yeah, Laura calls them vignettes, like those things you get in the morning, right? Like when you're sort of between waking and sleeping, right? Yeah. And it's like, they're very vivid, and like they seem to have a lot of detail, right? But they're probably just a few seconds, right? But they seem like, you know, a whole scene or a whole movie, you know, show or whatever it is.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So I went to this party when I was home in Los Angeles, right? And I had kind of a really interesting sort of experience, both externally and internally there, that is kind of like what I'm talking about here, right? Where it was like, it felt like half the people at the party were like previous or other versions of myself or of everyone else that I knew at the party, right? It was kind of like, maybe there was like, you know, it seemed like there was a few hundred people at the party, but maybe there was only like 50 or 100, and then 3 or 4 versions of each of them.
Yeah.
Right? Because like somehow either the location of the party or the sort of sound, like my friend Christopher Gardner was calling it like a sonic hypercube that was created, like pulled 4 different or 5 different dimensions together. And so like in each reality or each dimension, a version of yourself went to the party, and somehow with the sound system or the location, they're able to like pull all those different layers of the cake together. So you're literally at the party with other versions of yourself from different layers of the cake, right? And then as the party is over, everybody sort of goes back to where they came from, or maybe not. Maybe you left in a different one than you arrived in, and someone else went home to yours, right? But the similarities are sort of close enough that most people, except for the observant little fucks, wouldn't know, right? And it feels like if this is a phenomenon that is happening, if we are like moving into this, and I think another way of saying it kind of achieved differently, is if we're moving into open AI, right? Or this blurring of the lines between realities, both in terms of like, we think of them as other timelines or other dimensions, or literally between movies and real life, right? Everything is being blurred. There's probably ways you can generate it, ways you can observe it and control it, and other ways in which you can't. And all you can do is try to control people's awareness of it, right? So if you can use a sound system or a particular location to facilitate that kind of experience, and maybe some or none people who are there will realize what's happening, right? Or you can kind of create this, this is interesting because of your perception and your observation that there's always theaters and opera houses, right? Around where these events are. Like maybe it's a different kind of controlled environment than the one that I went into, but it's something like that, nonetheless, right? Like it's a different flavor of the same type of idea. And then there's something going on out there at the place in Iceland, right? And you have zero control over it. And so you want to keep the people away until you can figure out what your narrative is going to be about it, or, whatever it is. Like, I mean, that would be pretty weird if there were people coming out of whatever that fissure is. But that was basically the story of Katla, right? And it's like, if you saw an evil version of yourself, now in the story, it was like, oh, these people were dead and they came back, right? I can't remember if there was one scenario where one of the people that came out was also still like alive normally. I can't remember because we watched it a couple of years ago, right? But people would probably start to lose their shit if other versions of themselves were like walking around with them, or people they thought long dead were just wandering around like, nothing was up, kind of thing. And if if there's the possibility that this is a phenomenon that's occurring, my guess would be it would illusion warfare would be, a way to try and manage it, right?
Yeah.
And maybe it's kind of like the same thing with the Stonehenge and the Avebury or whatever. Like maybe it just happens like temporarily for a few minutes, a few hours, a few days, a few weeks. And then when things settle back down, things go back to normal. Maybe there's a little bit of, sort of somebody got stuck in the wrong layer or whatever, but it's not chaotic in the way that it was while something was active, right? Like it's kind of, if you watch any of those shows where, there's sort of a blending of realities or movement between timelines or universes, it's generally some energetic event that opens that up and then it closes, right? So maybe it's that. I don't know. Like, what do you think this thing in Iceland was really all about? I enjoyed watching both of your threads this morning. So let's get into the ice and the ire.
Have you been to Iceland?
No, I would love to go to Iceland.
So it's no, you should. It's the landscape is beautiful. There's one part that's very like they call it like a moonscape.
Uh-huh.
Where it's currently going off right now, it's been going off there all the time. So it's just black, lava there now, just all across it. So that's quite impressive. But I will say there's definitely something, I can't quite put my finger on it, but there's something off about that place and the people walking around it. I've always got to be careful with this. I don't want to offend nations when I say this stuff, but everyone has a look in their eye like they just want to scream, if you know what I'm saying.
Uh-huh.
Like I think they're content over there. I think they're very content with the system they have. These Scandinavian countries have got like a very kind of
Pushy socialism.
right. So they're
Yeah.
very content, but content doesn't mean happy.
Correct.
And I can see when I went to Reykjavik, the capital, you could just see everyone walking around with that kind of dead look in their eye. Like, yeah, like they just want to fucking scream and get drunk or something, have a fight with someone, but they can't. They've got to keep up appearance. They've got to keep up the Joneses and walk around. The capital itself, the capital is very Lego-ish, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like they got all these churches and stuff where they've done that thing where they do the fake lines on the render that makes it look like old timey brick, but it's not. Someone just carved in the line.
Yeah.
So it's very artificial in that sense.
Are you talking about Reykjavik?
Yeah.
Okay, let's look up Reykjavik here. How do you spell Reykjavik?
REKY.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. All right, let's go look at some images and what am I doing? Okay, there we go.
I mean, what's your thoughts on the whole, what some people call liminal people or composite people? These background characters are just composites of people just.
I mean, it's like, so when you say composite, do you mean like blending it? Like, particularly, I've noticed this at parties for years, but it was very clear to me, this last one, that I see a lot of people when I go to parties that look like iterations of other people I know from parties or combinations of two people that I know from parties. Right.
That's it. That's yeah.
A lot of this now, so at this particular party, I was seeing a lot of that, but I was also seeing iterations of myself. Like I literally saw versions of myself from like 2005, 2008, 2013, 2015, right? More masculine versions of myself, more feminine versions of myself. There was a couple where like the man looked like me at my most masculine and the woman looked like me at my most feminine. And each of them were doing my dance moves, different ones. She was doing certain dance moves. He was doing certain dance moves. But if you put them together, it would be me doing all my moves, right? Like, but that's what we would expect to see in a multiple reality kind of situation, right? We would see a variety, like every different kind of version you could imagine, right? Of, like let's just say we're in a pod. Okay, let's say we're in a pod and there's we have like a million different simulations or virtual realities that we can experience. And Emily in each version is like, there's like one central core Emily that has all of my thoughts, memories, personal characteristics, whatever. And I'm the one in the pod. And each simulation or layer of the virtual game or whatever is like an exaggerated version of certain characteristics of me, right? Or the one who, went this path as opposed to that path or whatever. But there's something in each one of them that connects back to the central person. And that there are some that are more evolved and more coherent than others, right? It would be my guess, right? That there's, many different layers to the cake, but the ones that are sort of most in alignment with the entirety of the being have the most fleshed out sort of characteristics. And then the ones that are just sort of like, I think about certain days or periods in my life where I was just like a shell of the person I am now based on things I was doing to myself, choices that I had made, whatever it is, right? And if like there's a reality in which that iteration of myself is sort of captured, or that's the one where that's Emily in that reality, it would look like a shell, you know what I mean? Just like this NPC version of Emily, right? Type of thing. So, it was an interesting experience to look at that. And it wasn't just me. It was like, oh, I see like there's these other people there who look like so and so when they were younger, or like if so and so and the person they used to date had a baby, this person looks like that person, right? Which probably is like closer to the truth of what we're dealing with here, that there's only like a few complete people or souls, or however you look at that, and then everything else is sort of like some sort of copy and paste or iteration of that. And then, the more times you copy and paste, so if I have an original file, right, and I give you a copy of it, and then from that copy someone else makes a copy, right, and on and on. And you think of this more, I don't know how it exactly works with like video or audio files, but like, let's say I send you a picture, or that there's like, I take a picture on my phone, right, and then you take a picture of that picture and you give that to someone else, who then sends it to someone who takes a picture of that on their phone. Is getting less and less and less resolution, right, and less and less complexity, to the point where it's just like a blob on a screen. And that is what some of these people that we call background characters, right, seem to be.
Yeah.
So I don't know what that is. Like, I don't know if it's a feature of our consciousness, if we're only able to render so many other things on the set completely and everything else has to just be like super basic, right? Or if that's the reality of how it is. If that is really that there's, maybe you're right. Maybe there's just like a few dozen of us, or maybe there's 144,000, right? And, everything else is just some fractal of that.
I'm leaning towards that today at the time of this recording. Yeah, because I've done it. I've traveled so many places now that I've seen this again and again and again, especially at like airports, train stations, especially when they got all this illusion warfare stuff going on and they hold people up and you can really just sit there and people watch.
Yeah.
You're in a different country and you're seeing the same people you'd see down your local high street. And they say there's only like seven in the world. There's only like seven, face shapes. Same as there's only seven actual storylines, right? Arcing storylines.
Mm-hmm.
7 continents, 7 seas, 7 days in a week. I think that's the limit at the moment. We seem to be stuck at 7. I think once we break through to 8, like the 8, where someone comes along with the 8th story arc,
mm-hmm.
We're going to have more fun here. There might be an 8th, face shape that turns up. We might discover an 8th continent, an 8th sea, and so on. We're very much stuck in the magical number of 7 right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I'm still leaning towards that. There's a very, very few amount of real ones here, and everything else is just
The flight number of the flight number of the plane in Manifest was 828.
828.
Right.
And next year will be 224, which will be 8. Mm-hmm. So maybe a new kind of Westworld narrative is going to open.
Like, we're not going to have the 7 wonders, the 6 senses and the 7 wonders of the world anymore. Like, there was in a few months back, Jeff and I like had a dump or whatever, where we were looking into this idea of like moving from like last week or 2 weeks ago, and then also several weeks back with something else, moving from the 6 to the 8, right? Like from the hexagon to the octagon, and there's this sort of septagram in the middle, which is like 7, but people don't think of that sort of shape as much because it's an odd number of angles, right? But it is kind of trapped between those two, right? Maybe the sort of reality used to be a hexagon and it's going to be an octagon, but we've been in this weird septagram or septagon for, let's look it up. Septagon or septagram. Let's see, like the septagon. It's a 7-sided, right? So you have your hexagon and your octagon, and it's a heptagon, not a septagon, I guess, 7 sides.
Let's just think about this for a sec, yeah? all
Yeah.
these people, these story writers in Hollywood or book writers, and we've never broken out of the 7 story arcs. How is
Hmm.
that possible? All this time. So either someone's stopping that, or we literally have a limit. And
Yeah.
like I think that's it. The 100th monkey thing. Once that 8th story arc gets out there, we should have some more fun. We should have some new narratives going on.
Yeah. Well, also it's just like I wonder like at what point the sort of original file disappears and something new is created from the iterations of the old, right? Like puts itself back together in a different format,
Yeah.
right? Like if you have a Legoland, right? Let's say like my nephew builds Legos, right? Like he makes the big structures and whatever, right?
Uh-huh.
If his little sister goes in and starts pulling a few pieces off, right? Then for a while you can still basically tell what it is, even though it's a slightly degraded version, right? But at a certain point, she's pulled everything off and it's just a pile of Legos on the floor, right? And she starts putting together her own thing with the same set of Legos. It's got all the same components, but it's not going to look like the one he built because he knows, he followed the instructions or made it up himself, and she just made something else with all of the same parts.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I've noticed when I have these experiences that a lot of times when I see, it was a little bit different this time, because this time I was seeing how there was like this genetic, almost this weird genetic homogeneity of everyone at the party in terms of like, it felt, and when I say that, I don't mean like everyone was Mexican or everyone was white or everyone was Chinese or whatever, but like everybody looked like varying degrees of combinations of the same sets of people that were there, right? And some more extreme, some had much more strong characteristics of one or the other, but you saw like a lot of these people that looked like combinations of 2 other people that were there. And I've experienced this before, but never when the originating people were at the party. Like I used to go to parties and see people who looked like they were trying to pretend they were another person I knew, right? But they would never be there at the same time as the person I actually knew. In fact, I remember one time being at this club, right? And the thing going on at the club was called Optics. And it was kind of it was the first thing I went to in Los Angeles after the original stage of lockdown. So in like early 2021, like spring of 2021, maybe, or something like that. And they there was no vaccine mandate yet. It was like the one thing that happened in between when lockdown loosened up a little bit and clubs and restaurants started trying to require you to have a vaccine, right? So it was like this little pocket of time I went out, and nobody had been out in like a year, right? And I was there and I didn't see anyone I knew, but I saw people who looked like people I knew. And then later in the evening, the people who looked like people I knew had left, and the people I actually knew showed up, but they were not there at the same time. Right? Like almost like there was this separation. And in this time, it felt like everybody was there at the same time, at least for a portion of the evening. But by the time the last DJs came on, right, it was like all the old school people and only the originals were there. Like the originals and maybe like one iteration, but like all the varieties of the originals were gone, right?
Yeah.
And like the main file was there, right? And including myself. Like by the end of the party, the only version of myself that was there was myself and the couple that was split into male female. And I don't know if you've heard me talk about the experience I had at a party like 15 or more years ago, where like I saw like a male version of myself on the other side of the room, but every time I walked over there, he would walk over to the side I came from, and we could never be on the same side at the same time. Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I was there, my whole self, and the male version of myself and the female version were there dancing around. And it was fun. There was a time when that would have bothered me. It would have made me feel paranoid. I would have felt like I was being mocked or, gang stalked, or that, they had sent the clones up to see if I noticed. And I was just amused by this. I was like watching them dance and kind of enjoying the experience. Right. And at the end of the night, and the guy was like teaching himself a breakdance move on the floor that I used to do. And this chick came over and started talking to him, and I was close enough that I could hear what she was saying. And it's literally like the same thing that a chick said to me at a party once when she saw me do that. Right. So it's like, I don't know what I don't know, like the degree of like imagination and hallucination versus how much of this was actual reality. It doesn't matter. It was so vivid and it went on for so long that I was able to like glean a fair amount of like information and insight from the experience. Right. But what was weird is at the time that I had that feeling that like there was some sort of like weird genetic reshuffling going on there. That's what it literally felt like. It felt like the sound was shuffling our genetics and rearranging them. And so I go over to my friend who listens to our shows, and I say to her, remind me sometime we need to have a conversation about genetics. She looks at me, she goes, you're feeling it too? And I was like, yes. Right. To that point, like I had been in my own experience for an hour or two, not having talked to me, like we hadn't talked in like an hour or two, and I went over, right? And that's what she said. I didn't tell her what I was thinking or what I was experiencing or anything like that, right? I just said, let's have a conversation about genetics sometime. She's like, yeah, you're feeling it, huh? Right? So, and I'm not convinced, I'm not 100% convinced that I left the party in the same reality I arrived from. Like I had an experience, and I talked about it a little bit with my friend Christopher. I recorded it. I don't know if I'm happy with that, so I don't know if I'll put that out. And a little bit with Howdy, right? But like something that I know I did, right? Something that I know I did at the beginning of the night was not done at the end of the night, right?
Oh, really?
Yeah, like right, and I mean, I'll repeat it here. People who listen to stuff are going to hear this multiple times. Let's get your thoughts on this. So I always get to the party and see if it feels like an environment that I want to take anything at or not. So sometimes I don't take anything. Sometimes I do. But if I feel like, yeah, this is, I can have fun with this and it feels sort of safe for me or whatever. So I got there and I ate mushrooms, right? And I had them in this plastic bag that had like this green thing on top, right? So I ate my mushrooms, and then I stood there with the bag in my hand and was like, should I put the bag back in my pocket or should I go throw it away in the trash can? Right. And I sat, this is like, I don't know, 1:00 in the morning, something like that, 1:30. I'm like, I'm going to throw it away. So I go over to the garbage can and I put it in the garbage can. And when I was over there, I saw that like some people had, probably tried to shoot their bottle of water into the garbage can and missed, right? So I picked up a few bottles and put them in the garbage can and walked away. And that was the end of it, right? At the end of the night, when we're getting ready to leave, I'm standing about 3 feet from the place that I was standing when I took the mushrooms. And so I'm looking at that spot, and the plastic bag is on the floor with the green thing on top, right? It's on the floor in exactly the place I was standing when I took the mushrooms at the beginning of the night. And on the floor there is painted an X, right with the bag, right on top of the X, like this sort of X. It's not like a regular X. It's kind of like, it looks like, I don't know if you've seen any of the things that I've been doing where we're looking at that occult chemistry book that has the remote viewed versions of the different elements. Let me see if I can find what I'm talking about. So,
well, was the mushrooms in the bag? Were the mushrooms gone?
Mushrooms were gone, right? The mushrooms were gone. It was an empty bag, but it was on like an area of the floor that had clearly been marked, right? Yeah. So it looked like this. I can show you. The bag was sitting on something that looked like this one right here, where I'm pointing. Oh, wow. Right? So I go over to my friend and I'm like, I'm just showing you this. See that right there? Like, and I told her what happened. And I was like, what should I do? Should I leave it there or should I throw it away? And we decided I would leave it there. Right. But there's a whole like this design right here was part of something that looked more like let me find one that like something like one of these. Let me see if I can find a single one. There was a pole that was like the center of the structure of the building, and it had a something painted on the floor that looked kind of like this, like one of these right here, like a whole pod with all this stuff in it. But at one end of it had this thing, right? And that's where the bag was on top of. And I said, remember that I showed you this because I'm going to ask you about it later. I'm going to talk about it later. And so like that, right? So what I don't know what that means, but I noticed that, right? So what are
what
your
type of
thoughts?
how was it marked up? Like fresh? A
No,
fresh mark?
it was like spray paint on the floor.
How old would you say that spray paint is? Like
I mean, it
old
wasn't
or
fresh. It didn't look like it had just been done 5 minutes before, but there was a variety of markings just on that point of the floor from where that X was to where the pole was, which was about like 8 or 10 feet. And the design that I showed you that looked kind of more like this was between them. So there was all these markings on the floor, right? And there was this, and the bag was right on that. Almost like, you know, when you're watching Hypnotic and they're on the stage set
yeah.
and they have things marked as to where certain things will take place. Like it was almost
Yeah.
like that. Like I was thinking, like there was like, okay, we're going to start the simulation here, right? When the person is standing here and takes the mushroom out of the bag, that will be the start of the simulation or whatever it is. Like they're marking up the stage set. I noticed
Yeah.
when I left the party, like this is the same location that I was at last time I was in Los Angeles when the party got shut down. And I'd had a variety of things to say about what I thought was going on then. But when the Uber came and picked me up to leave, it left the party a different direction than the Uber last time. And I got like and I was by myself this time. Like I left the party by myself. Last time I left the party with my friend Jason. So I was talking last time, and this time I was just looking around, and it literally looked that the whole neighborhood looked like that parking lot they had in Hypnotic where they were running all these like drills and simulations. Let me see if I can pull it up on the Google Earth. See if I can get a good overview. See what we got. All right. Okay, so the party is here. Right? So the part I got you get dropped I got dropped off here and the party was like right down here. Let me scoot out a little bit so we can see. Let's see, where is the, maybe I have this, maybe I'm understanding it from the wrong direction. It's kind of confusing when you're there, right? Because you don't get like you intentionally don't get dropped off right where it is, right? But so it's like down here, right near the train tracks. And remember that was part of Hypnotic also, right? Remember that whole scene where you see the different train lines, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But let's go to the Google Earth kind of thing. So see if we can. This is the neighborhood, right? That it's in. I don't know how to move around in here. I'm not very good at this. I can't find where the I'm not very good at moving around in this to find exactly, but if you look at this, even some of the graffiti looks similar to some of those markings
Yeah.
that I showed you, right? And the Sears Tower that looks like a Nazi panopticon is very like, I can't see if it's hard to find. I'm not good at operating this. Like Michael's really good at doing this. I can't do it. Let's just go to Noakes. Let's go to Noakes. Okay, so Noakes Street is here. All right. There's just the layers. I can't. It's hard to tell from up top. Like we're trying to see where the Sears Tower is to make it easier for me to do this, but I can't figure it out from here. Oh, this is interesting. Look at this right here. MK Global Trading. Huh. I'll have to do a better job at figuring out how we can look at it from the different angles, right? But the whole area looks like it reminded me of that Hypnotic movie, right? That parking lot. Even when I came out of the party, like I felt like I had emerged into that parking lot, right? And I was like, oh, what is it? Right? I mean, I recognize that, like, you know, I have all these things in my mind, and I have a very active and good imagination, and I'm a good projector and all that kind of stuff. So I take it all with a grain of salt that, like, you know, this could really be happening, or I could be walking around in a projection of my own mind. Those two things could be one and the same. They could be variations of each other. I don't know. But I was noticing all of the same markers around me that we notice in that movie, right? And that, you know, that areas where there's like interesting scaffolding or richly textured patterns also seem to be the focus of where all the activity is, right? Just like in the movie. Yeah. So what are your thoughts about the whole thing with the plastic bag, though?
I like what you said about it could be hypnotic, like you've got the cues on the floor, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And for a split second there, you were seeing through. I mean, that, you know, that film, let me tell you, that film is pretty crap, with the section being about an hour in when he realizes, the moment he turns around, he realizes, oh shit, this is all a hit. And then it just all disappears and he's just in an empty hangar. And then, like you said, it's a car park with literally cones on the wall. The car's not even a car, it's a golf trolley. That part there was it, man. That is it right there. That is pretty much Illusion Warfare summed up.
Yeah.
And I think you could be onto it there. But also, if we go back to our old friend, which people are probably sick of me talking about now, Tennant, the future you is leaving clues for yourself.
Yeah.
You're running a temporal pincer on yourself, which is what the whole film's about. He eventually finds out he invented Tennant. He's running Tennant, and there's the one that's ahead of you is running back, leaving clues for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it felt like. That is what it felt like, right? And it felt like when I was at that same location back in July, right? I was at that same location back in July. Party got shut down about an hour and a half after we got there. And literally at the moment I noticed and spoke out loud, as soon as I expressed in words coming out of my mouth to the person that I was there with that there was something funny going on, and I explained what it was, fucking lights go on, party's over, right? And it was almost like I caught on too quick, like, or whatever it was. Like I wasn't, it just like when he ends one, you know what I mean? Just like he wasn't ready to solve the puzzle yet, right?
Yeah.
Kind of thing. That's exactly what it felt like. And I'm like, this is fucking crazy. Like, would it literally be exactly like the movie? But what we're talking about here is that absolute bleeding over at this point between what we call movies or films and the real world, and then there's like a cross play between them, right? Like you have all these actors who, you know, like there's connections between the roles they play, and the connection seems to come in the form of who they actually are in real life, in terms of like there's some weird fusion of the two different characters, right? Like I think that we have this industry should be like the biggest clue to that. Like a lot of times you have someone playing in a movie, probably someone who they actually are in another timeline or in a previous life or will be in the next one or whatever it is, right? And that's why we have all these like, oh, this actor looks like so and so and from history or whatever it is, right?
Yeah. Well,
Um,
think about the evolution of it. Yeah. So we had TV, right? We had TV. Then we had what they called reality TV, where we'd essentially be watching people supposedly living their real life, right? In a Big Brother house or, naked and afraid or whatever and all this kind of shit. Then you had TV reality, where now people are constantly uploading their life to YouTube and stuff.
yeah.
Free. They're Truman showing themselves of their own free will. Pretty much everyone now is doing that. Like you could find a video of someone doing anything anywhere that's become normalized as the Truman Show yourself and film it. So 100% it's blurred into one thing now, where we are walking in a movie all the time. We're in hypnotic all the time. I mean, that whole part of it, of people filming themselves, that's it now. It's very rare now that you find somebody who is not taking selfies all the time, who is not constantly telling the black cube where they are and what they're doing and so on and so on. I mean, so what's the next evolution of that going to be? And I think it's what you said. It's just blurred into one thing now. And every person, you look at things like Instagram and that, maybe not me, you, and the people listening to that, but the vast majority of people on Instagram, they're in love with themselves, right? They're the star of their own show. Look at me at the gym. Look at me going bike riding. Look at me at this restaurant, right? They're starring in their own show and they've monetized narcissism, right? That's what essentially social media is. They've monetized narcissism, made people fall in love with their own reflection. So, yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting. I don't know about, I mean, you'd have to tell me when you go out to a clubbing scene or your kind of one that you go to, are people like filming themselves all the time? Are they constantly, talking to camera?
No, I mean, nowadays there's mostly a like no phones policy, which means like you can bring your phone because most people like come in an Uber and whatever it is, but they're basically asking people, like some parties, they'll put a black sticker over the camera, right?
Awesome.
Right. So there's a couple things. Like I think there is truly a genuine desire for people to be present, for the people who are like in this for the right reasons. But I think there are sound and light technologies being displayed and deployed, and they don't necessarily want those to be recorded, right?
Right. And that's why you've got to use the analog trick of drawing markings on the floor of spray paint.
Right.
Because let me tell you, and this is another thing I keep telling people, old technology is really the best thing you want right now.
Yep.
I always, I use an iPhone 8, because it's an old picture that's not being fucked with by AI. Because every modern camera now, it's no secret, AI automatically messes with the sound and what you're video recording anyway. It touches it up, it changes faces, it blurs out the background, it takes 3 pictures at once and merges it together. So even the pictures on your phone are not a genuine picture anymore.
Correct.
So old analog technology is the best thing you can have right now, especially something like drawing on the floor.
Yeah.
Because you might have looked at that through a camera. Let's say it was a different scenario where you looked at that through the camera. You couldn't really trust that was really there.
Correct.
You don't know that Google might have added that. Apple might have added that. So future tenant Emily knows how it works and is using old technologies, what you need in this day and age, I think.
Well, I mean, I also wonder, based on the experience that I had last time, the experience I had last time at the party was a little bit different. Like it was different but equal, right? Even though it was short, right? Because it got busted up not that long after I got there. But I could find like there was some similarities in the way sort of certain things about the experience operated. But one of the things that happened last time was there was a moment where it felt like the floor dropped out, right? Like I looked in front of me, didn't feel like it dropped out from under my feet, but I looked in front of me and it looked like there was like a hallway that leading down into the underground and that people were coming up it, right? And then as soon as I noticed that, this really weird group of like tall people that looked like they were from the 70s came and stood in front of me. So I couldn't see that spot anymore. And then after that, with a few minutes after that, I started to notice I was sweating profusely, which is very unusual for me, right? I was sweating profusely and my clothes felt so soaking wet that they were starting to feel like they were stretched out. Like my shirt started to feel heavy, right? Like it was starting to feel weighted. I'm like, I'm going to go outside and get some air. And so I go outside, and by the time I got to 200 feet outside, I was bone dry. Right. And I said something to my friend Jason about it. And as soon as I said something about it, the music went off and the party was over. And so I'm wondering if that, like, some of these markings on the ground, if like this, if this a certain sound or certain parts of the lighting or something like that are directed in a certain spot, like whatever that is, if it's creating an energy field where like that's where the compression or the expansion between the layers of reality happens. Like if someone's going to pop through, it's going to be there, right? And then they can move out around, in the room or whatever it is. And if they're doing it intentionally, then they know that when the field closes, they need to be standing back in that same spot, right? Or whatever it is. But like I literally felt like I saw somebody walk through a hallway from somewhere else into that room last time, right? And when I was there this time, when I'm looking at things out of like my peripheral vision, there was a much more intricate visual show this time than there was last time. But the way the visual show was this time, there was a gigantic screen at the front of the room. And then along the sides of the room, there were all of these like slivered screens. But if you looked out of the corner of your eye, your mind or your eye filled in the spaces between where there was a screen and when there wasn't a screen. And it looked like there was another whole picture on the side that there was on the front, right? And it almost seemed like a separate room over to the sides there. Right? Like, go ahead.
Them tall people from the 70s, they could essentially be the Red Jackets.
What are the Red Jackets?
The hypnotic Red Jackets.
Yes. Yes. The Red Jacket. Yeah. They were all tall. There was like a few of them, like 3 or 4. And like they had like afros and stuff. They looked like they came from Studio 54 or something like that. It was fucking weird. And it was very clear that they wanted to stand right in front of me, like 2 feet in front of me. So I could not see that spot.
But really, they were just average height with red jackets on. Perhaps. You know what I'm saying? And you know what's interesting about them red jackets, right? Sorry, we'll go back to what you're talking about, but that's what in the olden days, the theatre, like the cinema.
The ushers,
right, and theatre people. Also, if you remember, like the British Empire's, uniform used to be red jackets, right? The red coats. And there was always a lot of like speculation, like why did they wear red? And then, some people used to say is, so the enemy couldn't see them bleed and all this kind of shit. And other people used to say, well, no, it's because it was cheap. Red was the cheapest form of dye they could get. That's why they went for red. And now I'm just thinking, no, man, because them red jackets were out there as ushers, mate, just ushering the whole theatre cinema world.
You want to know it's
maybe they weren't. Maybe they weren't.
You have me thinking.
Go on.
Okay, so the DJ who was playing. So now we're not talking about this party. We're talking about the one in July, right? And at the one in July, there was a much less intricate light show, but the lights that were there, they were red. They were red. So this is the flyer for that party that I went to in July. Right here. Look at that. It's like a cross, like we've talked about before. There's like a particle and a light junction or something there, right? This was the flyer for the party. And then it featured Devious One and his wall of sound, right? Now, this isn't a picture from the party, but it is this same kind of light setup that they had with the right lights. And it was this kind of sound here, but it wasn't just a wall. There was like other stacks around the room. I'm going to see if I can find something set up that looks like what the room. I know there's no pictures from that party, but it was red lights in there. So what you're talking about here with the red jackets, the lights were kind of like this, right? It was like this weird lighting system and the disco ball. It did look kind of like that in there, but there was that wall of sound in the front and then stacks of speakers around the room. I can't find a picture that looks kind of like, the lights were like this. And then like the last one I showed, like that. Right? So there was no other color besides red lights that night.
And maybe that's the perfect environment to hide the red jackets, Maybe like how a ninja can wear black and hide in the shadows. Maybe when you put that red light on them, then red jackets can just vanish and just walk around freely. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here with ideas, but.
Well, there's a lot of focus on like far red, infrared, like red light therapy. Are you familiar with this?
Yeah.
Red light therapy. Let's see what's happening with red light therapy. Let's do a little.
Also, this is maybe a bit mythology. It might be real, but the first ever infrared, night vision goggles they used red instead of green, right?
Yep. Look at this.
And apparently,
red light masks.
Yeah, this is for your skin, right?
Yeah.
Allegedly, but we don't know what it's really for.
Let's go see. I just wanted to get some visuals.
See, when I was looking at red light therapy, I always was told you had to use an incandescent light bulb.
Uh-huh.
See, all this stuff is LED, which is not good for you. So you have to think about this, isn't it? Is maybe this not the kind of red light you really want?
All right, let's go. And I want to see if I want to get a little bit like information. I want like an explanation of what. I don't like coral. Let's go to something else. Let's see, I just want to see like what the supposed effects are and what okay, red light therapy benefits, side effects, and uses. Now, granted, this is from Forbes, so we're going to take it with an enormous grain of salt, but let's just get what they're saying publicly this is supposed to be. It's supposed to improve skin appearance, wound healing, and pain management. It's to aid in the healing of skin and muscular conditions such as scarring and tendinitis. Stimulates energy production in the cells. So like, I wonder if that kind of energy production, if that sort of like cellular regeneration, like would be something that would sort of parallel almost like time travel, right? Because one way, like to me, cell regeneration and time travel would coexist. They're the same thing. Like I have a kid that I work with on his diet, right? A young kid. I don't get too many young clients, but I have a few now. And about 6 or 8 weeks into what we were doing with his diet, he said, like, I had the weirdest experience today. Like I felt like how I felt when I was 16, right? So my guess would be as we started to have some turnover in like what was happening inside of his body based on, the consistency with which he had been doing the diet thing for a period of time. And so maybe he had some type of cellular turnover or something was going on. But if he said it wasn't just like, oh, I have energy like I'm 16, he felt the same way he felt like it was like he was back in that time. Right. So this kind of cellular activity, like maybe actually how time travel works, right? All right, let's just see. In October 1995, sources of red light, part of the visible spectrum of light, made their space shuttle flight debut on the second U.S. microgravity laboratory space lab mission as part of experiments in plant growth. And it's interesting, like whatever the fuck this is, oh, it just went away. Looks like some sort of pod you would sit in for. Okay, so visible red light therapy could be used deliberately as a type of photomedicine. It goes deeper than green, blue, or violet light. The light stimulates your cells to work at a higher level, activating your mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell. So that's ATP is like the energy production, right? In the cell. And I've talked about that, a lot in different ways. Interesting. Potential benefits: skin and hair conditions, fine lines and wrinkles, acne, scarring, wound healing, hair growth, of fat loss, reduction of pain. I mean, I don't know. It would be interesting to sort of look into some of the more sort of off the books, commentary about the technology or whatever. But when you're talking about these red jackets, like that was the dominant color inside that night was red.
Yeah. Yeah. That's that shade of red as well. I don't know, what would you Scarlet maybe? I don't know.
Yeah. Ruby, like ruby red slippers, like Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. But no, yeah, like I was saying, allegedly the first ever night vision goggles were red, which makes sense, right? Because if you ever do any like nighttime operations, you use red light because it doesn't affect your eyes as much.
Yep.
When you're working in the dark, so it obviously made the first night vision goggles red, and allegedly, people using this, they were seeing all kinds of mad shit, demons and fucking dragons and stuff flying around, and that's why they had to kind of not use red and had to use green instead.
Like I'm thinking about those red slippers and that spot on the floor. Look at the spark that's created when she steps on this spot with the red slippers, and then there's the witch grabbing at it, right?
Yeah. And a lot of the truthers make a big deal about celebrities wearing red shoes, like it means something about pedophilia or something. Right. I'm not too sure. But maybe that's what you need to do, be wearing fucking red shoes in a red nightclub, to tap into what the red jackets are doing.
Yeah, kind of like the opposite of like the blue houses didn't burn down, right? The blue cars didn't set on fire. So you have the red and the blue. So that is that we have that in tenet, right? The red and the blue.
Well, in politics.
Yep.
In the Union Jack.
Gang warfare, the Crips and the Bloods.
Yeah, in the magnetic poles,
Yep.
And obviously, together it makes purple, which is pretty much where we're at right now. So yeah, maybe there are blue jackets as well that are doing some other sort of thing.
Right. I mean, there's blue lights on all of our technology in the regular day-to-day stuff right now, right? And blue lights are that light of the Cherenkov radiation. So when you see, do you know what I'm talking about when I say like I saw weird blue lights, right? I'm not talking about when there is an obvious source of blue light. I'm talking about sometimes I'm just like in the shower and suddenly I see a blue light. Have you had this experience?
Yeah. No, but I know what you're talking about.
Okay. So there's this Cherenkov radiation, which it's this blue light that appears when something is moving faster than the speed of light. Right?
Yep.
And lots of people right now are also taking the methylene blue, which is the exact same color blue as the blue lights that I'm talking about in the Cherenkov radiation. Right? So there is something with this sort of red light, blue light, like I wonder if it does something to sort of our stream of consciousness, right? And almost like we have like one timeline or one sort of aspect of ourself or our experience that is activated by red lights, and another one that is activated by blue lights, and that's how they keep sort of certain thing keep them separated so that we're not able to put all the pieces together, right? Like I wonder if some portions of consciousness or memory are formed or stored in red light sensitive areas and others in blue light sensitive areas. Does that make sense?
Yeah, they do say it's, signs, symbols, colors, and numbers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Signs, symbols, colors, and numbers.
Mm-hmm.
To be fair, the one I never really focused on until I met human vibration was colors.
Yeah.
And I don't think people because we all focus on the numerology and the symbols, but colors doesn't seem to get a look in.
Colors have always been the most important for me.
There you go. I mean, if you keep your eye on kind of the fiction that's coming through the news, you'll see there are color themes. There'll be like 3 fictional stories in a row where the guy who shot someone is wearing a red, a red basketball jersey, and then the next thing you know, the person who got kidnapped is wearing a red jumper. And there does seem to be a sort of kind of subconscious programming of the masses through colors in these fictional narratives that are coming through the black cube.
Mm-hmm.
Which I speculate it's the same with the numbers when they're constantly throwing all these mad numbers up. If you've got the eyes to see it, you go on YouTube right now and look at the news feed, you will pick up on, the view number will be very, be like 33,000 every time. The length of the video will be like 9-11 minutes. They're constantly pumping out these numbers.
Yes, always.
I think they are. I think that is subconsciously programming the Westworld robots. I think that's how they're doing it. That's how they run new. That's how they upgrade
code or an algorithm.
Yeah.
I'm looking for something. So I know that the mushrooms never work on you. Have you had any kind of psychedelic experience that involved like very, very vibrant colors?
Yeah, the one time that the mushrooms kind of work is when I fell asleep on them.
Right.
I was in the infinite void of black space, and I could just draw reality like a pen, like Microsoft Paint, and it was this kind of purple and it's kind of spectacular purple I was drawing the lines with.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Did it feel different than any purple you've ever seen in the quote real world?
Yeah. This was yeah.
And what, aside from the fact that it looked different, like what was how did it feel different? Like what was special about it?
It was alive.
Mm-hmm.
It was like energy throbbing and sparkling with energy. And once I connected that circle and clicked inside it, water was in it. I could draw mountains behind it. And, a giant fucking interdimensional chipmunk came and started drinking at this river I just made.
Wow.
Yeah, man. The purple was, yeah, man. Like it's hard to describe it in human words, isn't it? It was like the sum of all life was in this purple line.
Yeah. So one of the things that I noticed about the psychedelic experiences is that it isn't just the content in terms of like whatever narrative my mind, my consciousness is generating, or what pictures I'm seeing, or what symbols I'm seeing, or whatever. It's also about the hue, the tone, the vibration of the colors, and they seem to be carrying information, almost like a streaming service across dimensions, right? That is like just shooting like color-coded information into my pineal gland or my third eye or my memory or my consciousness or whatever it is, right? And you never see in your real waking life anything that vibrant, right? There's never anything there. I never see a color in my everyday life that has as much sort of emotion or feeling captured in it. Does that sound similar?
Yeah, I get you. Yeah, I get you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when I used to come home from parties and I would go looking for images that looked like things I had seen behind my eyes, right? I was looking for shapes, design, symbols, everything, but I was also looking for colors, for things that captured that vibrancy, right? And I've never found anything available on the computer that is as good, but I've found a few things that like approach that level. And this is one of the things I've found that is the closest to capturing in a digital image the vibrancy of the colors that I'm talking about. I feel something when I look at that. Like I feel it in my arms, right? Now, I do see a lot of things that look like this in my psychedelic space, but there's something about the vibrancy of the way these colors come together and the way that they're playing off the dark scale and the light scale, so the black and the white. Like some of this sort of pink and purple in here, right, is incredibly vibrant. But this is just some of the closest. It still is not representative of the hue that I see in the psychedelic space, right? I don't know what it is. I don't know if like if we have these chromes, these cryptochromes, I think they're called, some inside of us. And so we are generating that, and everything we see in the external world is not that, right? I don't know where the color is coming from when we see it in that psychedelic space. Like, do we have like this hidden hyperdimensional, box of crayons or colored paints or something like that stored in the pineal, right? Is that the light spectrum on the prism, in the sort of Pink Floyd, image or whatever it is, right? I have a few other, like I have thousands of images that I have saved over the years that look like similar to things, but not exact, that I've seen in the psychedelic space. And I have a few other things that, maybe have, start to strike at the memory of the vibrancy of the color that I see, but are still not it. Right. But whatever those color bands are, like, it feels to me that like that is actually where the higher knowledge is stored. And maybe in terms of the symbolism, because I do see a lot of symbols in that space, right? I definitely see a lot of symbols in that space. But when I see symbols in that space, when I really pay attention to them is when it's, now I have to go back and find that picture I was looking at with you again, because I want to show you something again. All right, let me see if I can find it again, because I went away from it and now I'll have to look for it again if I'm going to use it again. Shit. Where did it go? Let's see. I think I may have lost it. Damn, it took me a while to find it before. I think it's in the next row up. Let's see. Is it there? Where is it? If you like, when I was showing that, there's like the flower of life or that sacred geometry or whatever it was, right? And the color was most vibrant, like where the angles of the symbol was, right?
Yep.
So maybe the symbols that we see are just the way the sort of prismatic color spectrum is reflecting off of that, right?
Yeah.
No, I lost it. I can't find it. Oh, well, I guess it was a one and done thing. People can go back and look to see what I'm talking about. But where the colors start to press together at the angles of the symbol is where like the most amount of like activity or information is, right? So I do think, and again, back to that flyer I showed you from the party that had that one particle of light in the magic hands, right? Like, let's pull that back up. Let's see here. Right? Like, this is where the magic is. It's the way light hits certain particles. Like, there is two beams of light, right? Like, how would you explain what that is right there?
It's like they're summoning a ball of energy from I know I kind of got the Jedi in my mind, like how a Jedi can manipulate the Force. It's like that.
Like I
Go on,
want,
what are you thinking?
like what I'm thinking is like there's a place where two energies are coming together, and maybe there's some sort of
Mm.
small particle or field or whatever there, right? And then this whole array opens around it, like holding the whole world in your hands, and maybe so much of it is just a sort of spectral illusion of the colors emanating from the particle beams of light, right? And then
Mhm.
the magician is the one who can sort of paint a picture or weave a story with that, right? um I don't know, but I do think that, like, you know sound and light are at the core of whatever this is that is happening, right? It is, I think you can do the most amount of illusion warfare, right? But then there's also, like, I mean, I think if the person conducting, like, the issue with these scenes, these stage sets that you approach, is that someone is conducting them, right? Someone is creating this sort of walled off area that has everything focused in on it, and then they're letting a narrative, they're starting a narrative, and they're trying to kind of force a certain scene to be acted out, right?
Yeah,
But, you know, in some of the environments that I'm going to, there's just I mean, there's certainly been things before where it feels like there's something weird going on and someone is trying to make something happen. But a lot of times it's just this sort of, like Christopher said, this sonic hypercube of sound and light with no particular narrative being generated other than maybe what's being shown on the screen up front. And so then it's your individual perception of what is happening on the screen or what is playing out in front of you. But it's sort of more like an open air, choose your own adventure, go where your consciousness takes you kind of thing. Whereas, when you're going to these places, there's like a queue and there's arrows and there's, people who are the center of focus and all of that kind of stuff. But maybe the technology that is creating the environment that allows for these experiences to feel meaningful or feel like something that is more than what they actually are on some level is the same. Does that make sense?
yeah. I would say the ones I focus on are in totally a distraction. It's well stage theatre, right? It's meant to have all eyes on it, which takes you away from what you're meant to be looking at or what you could be looking at.
Right, but it has sound and light there to attract people's attention. And then there's like a play being carried on that people are looking at while something else is going on somewhere else.
Yeah,
Right? If
I
there wasn't if there wasn't sort of a choreographed narrative going on in there, right? Would same set of sound and lights cause whatever experience someone had in there to feel equally as important? See what I'm saying? Like like when you felt like you went on to the stage set in Ukraine, it felt different once you entered the stage than when you were off of it. Right? Like when you said you went through those things on the train with the little girl.
yeah.
Right? There's something about stepping into this area where everything is highlighted, where everything sounds different and is lit up different, that creates a different experience of everything else that is otherwise the same.
I'll never be able to get the human words to describe the feeling you have when you walk onto them places.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's off. There's something it's like you stepped into a different world and you can sense it's off. You've just got uncanny valley everywhere you look.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah.
Okay,
I've never really been able to put that into words. I don't think most people get what I'm talking about when I talk about that kind of stuff.
yeah.
And even like the sort of like areas around it, it's stuff off as well. Like we were talking about earlier with these kind of liminal people walking around.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Inception's the best kind of like if I had to like draw a similarity, it'd be Inception when they go into a dream.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just there's a little telltale signs that you're not in the same you're not in the same places when you're awake. There's just little telltale signs, like even the feeling of like, how did I get here? I don't know if you remember that scene. He's when he's teaching the new person, like he says, how do, and she like can't really remember. There's also that kind of feeling as well, like. So I don't know if that answered your question or helped you in any way, but
So I'm going to have to keep this one a little bit short today because I have to go to work, but I want to show you something. When I went this morning to watch the video of the whatever the fuck, the eruption or the fissure or whatever they're fucking calling it in Iceland, this was the ad that was on the page.
yeah.
Right? That was the only ad on the page. And when I went to watch, when I was in your thread, I can't remember if it was the Ireland thread or the Iceland thread, this was on the page. And it took me a second to figure out what this was, right? I was looking at it for a bit, right? And I think it's a 3D printer. Huh?
Yeah.
They're using, I think this machine using the blue laser light 3D prints these things that look like bugs or dinosaurs.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then they have the tractor or whatever this shoveler is on here. I don't even know what to make of this, but this is what was on the Threader page where, it was just under where you were watching that lady came over and talked to you in Ireland. That's what it was. And you were looking at the projection on the building.
Oh, yeah.
Which I thought was fascinating too.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, wow, that's magnificent art, right? But like, to me, how much of the scenery that was happening on the street there the night before was coming out of that box as well?
Yeah.
Let's show people that real fast. Hold on a second. I can't take it anymore. I have to pee. I'm going to push pause for a second and then let's come back and show that. And I want that conversation you had with her was interesting too. And then we'll wrap it up. I'll be right back. Okay. Sorry about that. I'm back. Okay. Let's go to your thing because I felt like that was pretty telling. Did that occur to you when you were standing there with her watching that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I also just say I've been peeing a lot today as well. And I'm like, why is that? I haven't drunk any more than I usually drink or anything.
Yeah.
Anyway, sideline note. Anyway, yeah.
No, I have some days where it doesn't make sense, like the amount of peeing that I do right? And then other days, like I'll go half a day without going to the bathroom and I drank the same exact stuff, right? Yeah. I will say this. When I was at the party this last time, and it's funny, I've been meaning to tell this to someone and I just kept forgetting about it because there was so many other things that were interesting about the experience. When I left the party and I went outside and I was waiting for my Uber, like I noticed there was something in my phone, like in between. So I have like 2 layers of screensaver over my phone because I drop my phone a lot, right? So between one of the layers and the phone, there was like this liquid moving around inside of there. Now, I did not, like my phone was in my pocket the whole time at the party. I drank 1 bottle of water the whole time I was there and hardly touched my phone. But there was this something in my phone that was like plasma-like or gel-like or something like that, right? And I noticed it when I went out there to call the Uber. And it was like, that is weird. How did that get in there? And the way it was moving was really bizarre, right? And I intentionally left it. And it was like weird in there for a couple of days. Like it made it like if it was where I was trying to type something, it wouldn't type. And eventually it dried and turned into some kind of like little crystal or rock. And now it's like evaporated, but there's just like this weird gray spot there where it used to be. It's like, what is that? Was that like some sort of weird little piece of like some plasma membrane between realities that I was in? I do think, right? Like, I do think we have different relationships with like moisture and hydration based on sort of where we are and what's going on. But anyway, that was a weird thought of mine. But let's go to this thing in Ireland. This was fascinating to me, right? Okay, here, let's find the one I'm thinking of.
So should I fill people in? So that street is called O'Connell Street, and that's where it all happened. And either end of O'Connell Street is a theatre. In the middle is a giant fucking magic wand, which is called the Spire, which is just a giant magic wand. And then there's this building here, which is the GPO building, the General Post Office building, quite a famous building in Dublin.
Put the sound
and
on.
yeah, man, they were projecting all kind of mad psychedelic type artwork on the side of it. Very vivid colors as well.
All right, let's watch this because, yeah, let's watch it. Look at that.
That's really good, isn't it?
It's amazing, isn't it? Yeah.
I never seen that before.
Oh, is it new, is it?
Huh?
It's new.
Well, I haven't been in town for fucking years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's really amazing.
Look how vibrant it comes up on my screen.
That's fucking. Oh
It
my
looks
God.
even more vibrant on the screen, doesn't it?
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's impressive.
Look at that bunny rabbit in front of the building. Like it doesn't look like it's flat against the building. It looks like it's moving in front of the building.
Yeah, and then what happens now? It's all crashing down.
Wow.
Yep.
That's impressive, isn't it? What building is this? Crumbling down.
That's the GPO.
Like a government building.
No, it's General Post Office.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That used to be Clues. Remember Clues?
No,
Oh no, you from?
I'm not from around here. No.
Right, Jace, right. That's fucking amazing. Amazing, I've never seen it before. Where are you from yourself?
I'm from London.
London, yeah.
Yeah. I only got here a couple of hours ago.
And would you see a big difference, London to here? Were you here last night?
I wasn't. No, was you?
Oh, for fuck's sake, no, I wasn't. Thank God. You probably heard of what went
Oh, I saw it in the news. Yeah.
absolutely fucking horrendous.
It's this street, wasn't it? It was this street.
Yeah. It was this street, yeah. It was tram, Garda cars, buses, trams,
Yeah.
fucking everything. Oh,
I thought maybe there'd be something happening tonight, but
no. Oh, thank God. I wouldn't. Yeah. They wrecked the place. They fucking wrecked the shops and everything. Yeah.
really.
Wrecked it. Yeah. That is amazing. Look at this shit. Like, oh my God. The cars are as fucked as fucking happened here.
There's a lot of them driving around, isn't there?
The whole lot of them. Oh, I swear to God, that's amazing. I can't believe that. So
Like, I'm sorry, but this black box was projecting something else the night before. And that's just what it was projecting tonight. And like what she was saying about, oh, they wrecked the street. Really? If the street is wrecked, it takes more than 24 hours to unwreck the street. That was projected wreckage.
Well, yeah. I mean, not to pick on that woman, but she clearly. I said, "Were you there?" She said, "No," and then continued to tell me the story as if she was there. And yet again, this is not to pick on her, but this is the hypnosis you get with any situation where people who weren't even there talk as if they were there, and this is the masses are walking around with a head full of memories, fake memories that didn't really happen. Do you know what I mean? So yeah. I arrived in less than 24 hours and the supposed burning bus had already been moved and that street was fine. And looking at that footage right now, you see how people are just walking past and they're not really noticing that projection.
Yeah.
Like when I saw that, I was like, whoa, I just stood there, blown away by it. These background characters, they just walk straight past it like it's nothing.
Yep.
They're just not impressed by this kind of stuff, And who was that woman? Like, who the hell was she? Like, where did she come from? Another one of these kind of weird characters that just come out of nowhere. Because you got to remember, this was like, at that point, it's about 1 a.m. and she's just walking around on her own, chatting to strangers like that. Interesting stuff, man.
The box looks exactly like the box on your double cross system avatar there, right? So
Yep.
where's the gentleman? Where is there someone behind that we kind of, it's you. No, just kidding. Right. But that box up top looked almost exactly like that. So, I mean,
cube as well, again, isn't it? A black cube. It's a black cube.
Right. And then this, we've talked about your image before where if you're just looking at the part that's in the cube, it looks like the guy who's running away is actually stabbing the other guy. But when you can see the whole thing, you see, no, he's chasing him with a knife. Like, my guess would be that that's kind of a lot of what is going on with these street scenes, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And that the level of projection that was going on that building, I think they could, you could saw at one point, they just had like these white lines everywhere, like almost like strange, just white scattering of lines, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it looked like it was laid out flat. It didn't, like, when I say flat, I mean like horizontal, not like vertically against the building. The amount of depth perception that they can create with some of these projections, like, it wouldn't surprise me if the entirety of the thing was just projected on that wall and people thought they were looking at a real scene.
Yeah.
Or some proportion of it was, right?
Listen, we can't rule this kind of stuff out. And we're getting a lot of revelation right now with certain people, like music artists like Drake and stuff, where their hologram is handing them objects and they're holding it.
Yep.
The hologram is, handing them a Bible and then they're holding the Bible. And it's like, well, that's a very, very clever magician's trick there, but how are they doing it?
Yeah. No, I mean, everything is about perspective and angle, right? Like, and perception and projection, right? It's all like where the inner stimulus and the outer stimulus meet, like at that point, those two beams of light meeting with the particle and the magic hands around it, right? Like where your imagination meets something or someone else's projection, you know what I mean? Perspective and perception come into play, and that's the created reality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Couple of red jackets walking around with black cubes and projections and leading the crowd and stuff, and it's kind of easy.
Totally. All right. So if you want to make a Merry Double Christmas thumbnail, I'll put this out on Christmas. Next time I won't have a time limit, but I have to go to work today because I'm going out of town. I have to get some things.
Emily,
done.
I'm gonna be honest. I'm kind of glad because I don't know about you, but I'm just in a funny mood today. I don't know if that water dripping on my head in the car, but I don't know. I think it's because at the end of the year, I'm quite burnt out.
Me too. I'm like done. I'm like done.
Yeah, I'm very, very burnt out. So I think it's a short one, but I think, for both our sakes, it's kind of good, right?
So I will link both your thread on Iceland and Ireland. I think it's funny that all they had to do was replace the C with the R and reset, replay, rerun. There we go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Guys, go check out his threads. I laughed out loud a couple of times while watching them. So they're just definitely interesting to look at and entertaining as well. You've definitely got a good sense of humor. And you're going through all the steps of initiation into your 33rd degree, my friend.
Yeah.
All right.
Awesome. All right.
That'll be it for us for 2023, and we'll be double crossing it up again next year, and we will see you then. Have a good one, everybody. Okay, now to the part that is interesting that happened right after we got off. You guys heard sometime during the second half or towards the end of the show. I don't remember exactly when now because we recorded a few weeks back. Les and I talking about the party, some of the parties that I had been to, and I showed the flyer for this party I went to that had been shut down while I was having an interesting experience with it. And I showed this flyer for the party, if you guys recall. This was the party that I went to in July in Los Angeles that got shut down. As soon as I got off of the show, within 30 minutes to an hour afterwards, I got an email from the people who put on that show announcing a redemption show, right? So they are rescheduling. Yeah, they're gonna make it up to us. The part that's fucking fascinating is if you were listening to the conversation with Les and I, we were talking about red lights and blue lights, and so the prior flyer was kind of focused on a red tone, and this one, sort of red and purple, and this one is blue and green. And Les and I were having some conversations about red lights versus blue lights, and this has been an ongoing topic for the last couple of years in regards to like Tenet and the red and the blue. And for those who are sort of paying attention to the sunlight and mitochondria conversation, the differences or benefits or drawbacks of red light versus blue light. So I expect to experience an entirely different reality this time. I don't, this was one of the weirdest things I'd ever had happen at parties. Like, it is not unusual. So as you can see right here, they're side by side. So here we have the red from the party that got shut down and the blue for the upcoming party. In all of the years that I've been going to raves or underground warehouse parties or anything like that, it's not uncommon for parties to get shut down. What is uncommon is for the thing, and I've talked about this, what was going on for me at the moment that the party got shut down. But what's weirder is I've never received an email with a multi-page apology for the party getting shut down before, and then a rescheduling of said party that they title Redemption. So when I got the apology, there was all of this stuff about how they made a mistake, they did something wrong, they didn't cross all their T's and dot all their I's and whatnot, and they were determined to get it right the next time. So I guess this will be the next time. I have never seen this behavior around one of these kinds of events before. And the fact that they came with their blue light special right after Les and I had discussed the red light special was just another fascinating tidbit. Anywho, I think that's all. Now the lights are flashing in the room a little bit. That's a little weird. Okay. Hope you guys enjoyed the chat, and we'll see you next time.